Recording?
Yep.
Okay, hello everybody. We are going to discuss today the role of fatherhood and men, or men and fatherhood in that order. So what the roles of men are today and fatherhood in particular. So a little bit about myself. I'm a single father of 4 and a dad to 6. So I got a little background with kids. Been raising kids for about 25 years now, and I'm going to offer my views on what I think is probably the most essential, important parts of raising children and establishing protection for them. Okay, so and I'd like to say at this time I'm not a psychologist, or I'm not a child psychologist, but I can say if you're a parent, you are a child psychologist. You have to be, in order to try to meet the needs of what they need, emotionally, physically, the security needs, and so forth. So what we'd like to discuss a little bit today is the role of men in fatherhood. Now, if you look at, we're going to use this as an example, and this is just a rough draft. This is just the first go, so we got a lot of fine-tuning to do. This is probably the first of probably 5 tapings, so we'll get better as we go. This is just to get the process rolling and get a script for the process. So we're going to look at this here is the world. So this essentially is going to represent the world, and then we'll put our place in the world as we go. So we'll figure out how to establish the protection that we need to go forward for our families. And this is important to understand that fathers are really important to the family, and mothers are really important as well. We both have our roles, and they're complementary roles in regards to raising the family. They're not at odds or contrary to each other. They're complementary. So men offer certain things and women offer certain things, and so we don't want to get into a lot of stuff with men and women and things like that. So I'm going to stay away from that, and I'm going to give you my perspective. If you don't like it, then you don't have to watch. Don't send me any email. Send me only good emails. Okay? That's what I like, good emails. Okay, so as we move forward, one of the most important aspects of society today is the roles of fathers in the lives of their children. And it's extremely frustrating to watch society fall apart as fathers abandon their posts and are neglected or rejected and basically reduced to second or third class status because fathers are deemed not as important. But let's go through a few stats first. As we all know, fathers are important, but when you see the stats and you hear the stats, you start to really understand that it's really important. So it's from the Department of Corrections. These are from different sources, so I won't name all the sources, but Department of Corrections, the Census Bureau, things like that. So 85% of youth who are currently in prison grew up in a fatherless home. Children without a father are 4 times more likely to live in poverty. Okay? Children from fatherless homes are twice as likely to drop out of school. 1 out of every 3 children in the United States is not having access to their father. Girls who live in a fatherless home have 100% higher risk of suffering from obesity than girls then have teens from a fatherless home are also 4 times likely to become mothers before the age of 20. Pretty alarming stats, but we see it in society. We see it all the time. In 2011, these are old stats, but they still represent, they're probably worse now, but in 2011, 44% of children from homes headed by a single mother were living in poverty. Just 12% of those children from married couples were living in poverty. So a 44% difference to 12% from a married couple to single moms. It's a travesty. Children who live in a single parent home are more than 2 times more likely to commit suicide than children in a 2-parent home. 75% and we'll finish with this one, 75% of rapists are motivated by displaced anger that is associated with feelings from abandonment that involves their father. U.S. Department of Justice on that one. Okay, so we see statistically fathers are important. Okay, so what do we do? How do we do that? How do fathers, and what's my understanding or what I've seen in life is that men really don't understand their roles, or they bought into the perception that their roles are not important. So between a lot of the socially correct, politically correct dysfunctions of society, they've really reduced men to believe in that they're really not that important. So men actually even have the ability to say, hey, you know what, I'm not that important, I'm just going to go do my own thing. And that's what a lot of them do, especially after the divorce, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so let's look at dad's role. The way I see it, okay? Dad's role is to protect his family from the evil in society. So what I did with my kids, and what I did is I established a hedge. I established a hedge for my family. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just did it. I just figured that they needed safety. They needed physical safety, number one. They need physical safety. They need emotional safety. They need structure. They need discipline. They need attention. You know, attention is very important to value your child. They need truth. They need honesty. They need sacrifice. They need you to sacrifice for them, and love. So that's how you build a hedge. That's how fathers and men build a hedge for their families. And you continue to reinforce that hedge. And you and your children are in this hedge. Okay? Now, that's going to protect them from hate, the lies, evil, the abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, chaos. If they're inside the hedge, then they're going to be more protected than if they're not in the hedge. Now, people, children, families, if they're living out here outside of their own little hedges, well, guess what? The world has access to the children. They have access, and that's what happens. You see it all the time. They go out into the world and they become seduced by the world. That'd be another one, seduction. So let's throw that on there, seduction. Seduction in different things, drugs, alcohol, whatever you want to do. There's temptations. Let's put that down there as well. Temptations. I'm not the best artist, so we have to go with what we got. Okay, so the roles of fathers. Okay, now let's go to a biblical story, and I'm not going to preach yet. So there's a biblical story about Job, a guy named Job who was attacked by Satan. Okay, so what happened in that case was God was talking to Satan, and they were talking about Job. And then Job said, he can't touch Job because he has a hedge around him. And the hedge is mentioned a number of times in the Bible, so you can go look it up. So Job was, basically Satan was complaining that Job was protected from the hedge, and he didn't have access to him. So in their discussions, and to make a long story short, we won't get involved with the biblical applications because that's a whole other issue. So God removed the hedge, so Satan actually had access to Job, and he destroyed his world. Okay, and so that's what happened when God removed the hedge, and that's what's important here. If fathers do not build the hedge, if they do not maintain the hedge, then their children and their families are going to be at the will, at the world, and Satan's deceptions. Oh, that's another one, deception. Different. So deception, that'd go with lies anyway. So that's what we have. We have a hedge made. And we'll continue. So getting back to my story, I married a single mother. So what happened was I realized these kids were out of control, and I was young, and we were all young in our late 20s. But I realized that they needed discipline, they needed love, they needed attention, because they were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And emotionally, they were all over the place. You know, a bad situation with a divorce. So what I did was I came in and I created a hedge. And it took a number of years to really reinforce to the children, to my stepkids, that the hedge was there and it existed, and they could feel secure and emotionally and physically secure in that hedge. And until they did. And then they grew up with that. And then when we had our own children, I had 4 more children with her. So they grew up in that hedge as well. But again, I didn't even know I was building a hedge. I just knew I was providing them what they needed in order to grow as human beings. So, but then when you start learning about life, and you get older and more mature maybe, and you learn some of the biblical applications, you start learning, okay, well, this stuff is real. And then we got the story of Job. So let's see where we go from here. when you break down the hedge, or when a child, and people are free to leave the hedge. For example, my ex-wife was in the hedge. We'll put her right here. We'll make her an X, just for that's a variable in mathematical terms. Okay, so people are free to leave the hedge. So whatever you create, and it's by their choice. And when you create your hedge, you also give them choices, and you allow them the freedom to move in and out. So when we got a divorce, and we'll discuss the hedge later in regards to that, she jumped out of here. So she's no longer under my hedge, under, let's say, our family created hedge. She's out there. Now she's subject to all these other things, a lot more than she would be if she was in here. And if a child wants to leave, they have that right to leave if they want to, but then they're leaving the safety and security of the hedge and going out in the world. And we all know what happens when kids go out into the world unprotected, or they go out there without their own little hedge. Like if they create their own little hedge, very difficult for people to do on their own. And kids and women really aren't designed to build hedges, and just the way we are biologically ordained by God. And we won't get into God discussion. I'm just telling you how it works. Okay, if you can look at the world and see how it works. If you don't believe me, that's okay. So anyways, you have the ability to go in and out of the hedge, but the more you go out of the hedge, the more you're going to be susceptible to all these things. It's going to compromise the child or the person, and then you will not have the protection of the hedge. Okay, so for example, when my oldest daughter got married, okay, so we have an issue here. Now what do? We have, does he build his own hedge with his own little family? So we got him, and now he's got a little kid, he's got a little son. We'll say Y, his name. He'll be variable Y, because there's going to be more kids maybe, possibly in the future. So do you have them build their own hedge? Well, really, he didn't really know how to build a hedge. He didn't know what he was doing, just as, I didn't know what I was doing when I was at, mid-20s. So as generations go, if the older generation is doing what they're supposed to do, they're teaching the younger generation, helping the younger, guiding the generation, not micromanaging the next generation, but helping the next generation. So Clint, we'll call Clint here. Clint's going to build his own hedge. He really didn't know how to build his hedge. So what we try to do is we try to get him to build his hedge in here. Okay, so now we got Clint building his hedge in here, which is protected by my hedge as well. Okay, so now they got double protection. As long as they want to, let's say, respect my authority as an elder, helping them, not and guiding them, but not micromanaging them. So I get them to build their hedge inside, so that way, when, unlike the ex-wife who jumped out of the hedge, she's not protected. There's nothing I can do for her. Whatever happens in the world happens. There's nothing I can do. But unfortunately, if the kids are with her, that's bad things happen to the kids if they go to an unprotected hedge. And we've seen that with a lot of families, a lot of single women who really don't build the hedge. So okay, so let's get back to the kids. So now my son-in-law, my new son-in-law, I start teaching him how to build a hedge. Love, respect, kindness, sacrifice, honesty, truth, all these good things, all these valued things, so that way he can have a good relationship with my daughter, because that's what I want, for them to have a great relationship. And then they have a little son, so they got a little Y. Little guy comes out, and so now they're in this hedge. Now let's say, for example, because the young people aren't really experienced at building hedges, or really strong hedges, they don't build good ones. So their hedges have holes in it, or they're very weak. So what happens, and this is just an example, we're just seeing an example of what happens. What happens when little Y, who grows up, and then we all know, and he happens to be a boy, so he's a little more rambunctious than, let's say, the average kid, and he's probably a little more rambunctious than most boys. He gets out of the hedge. He comes out and he decides he's gonna be undisciplined, he's gonna be ungrateful, he's gonna be, how little kids are, especially by parents who really don't understand discipline and love and the interaction of raising a kid that way. So little Y gets out, but now he's under my hedge. So he's still safe. So, and then I've had to go back and talk to both my daughter and my son-in-law and say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you build your hedge. Because now I know what I'm talking about. I can tell them, even explain to them what they're doing. So I fixed the little guy, so to speak. You know, he's good. You know, I discipline. You know, love, of course. Discipline and love are almost equal parts when you're, you know, 12 months old, 18 months old. Not discipline and spanking or anything like that. We're just talking about what he needs to know and not to be able to do things that he knows he's not supposed to do. Okay, so my job is to really put this guy back in his hedge and help Clint reinforce that hedge, which takes some time because this guy's always getting out, which came a lot of work for me. So I got to come in and I straighten him out and give him back to him, and then he gets out again. And I'm like, come on, guys, you guys really got to get your hedge going. So, but that's how that works. If he's in here, okay, within my hedge, as an elder generation, I should be creating that hedge for him, for my family. Still, until I die, I'll be, you know, operating a hedge, or until, you know, these people are strong enough in order to take over the hedge. Okay, so and that's how that works. And then it got to the point where little guy was good for me, but he wasn't for them. You know, and that's not the situation we want. We want him to be good for both of us. But that's what my hedge did for him, and all I would have to do is look at him, you know, just give him a look, look, and he would stop what he's doing and he, you know, act properly. But it takes time for parents. New parents especially need to help, and not micromanaging, but they need the help of being able to guide them, as long as hopefully they're willing to learn. Okay, so that's what happens when you have kids and you have to. Oh, good. So I have to continue. Okay, when parents. Okay, we're gonna discuss divorce now. Okay, now when you get a divorce, and I just got a divorce. You know, I started a divorce 5 years ago. So again, we talked about my ex-wife. She's out here now. Okay, she's doing her own little thing. No protection from me. There's nothing I can do. It's like, okay, see what happens. As a man and as a father, when you establish your hedge, you know, if there's a divorce, you don't get crazy. Mental illness is an aspect, narcissism. There's a lot of issues that may be involved with the divorce, but if you're a properly growing individual and people want to leave the marriage, you let them leave. It's as simple as that. There's nothing you can do about it. You can try counseling, you can try all these things to try to keep them in the hedge, but if that doesn't work, you let them go. Okay, so one of the big problems with divorce is now you've given the courts, in general, if you're going to fight, you've given the courts the authority to determine your hedge. And we all know how courts are towards men. They destroy the hedge. So now the father is relegated to one day a week, every other weekend, which doesn't do the kids any good. It is my opinion, in divorce, both the husband and the wife should have access to the children on a daily basis, just as they did before, because the kids need that constant interaction between two positive adults who are trying to do what's best for the kids. But that doesn't happen. What happens is, in general, the woman gets the kids and whatever else, and the man is destroyed and his hedge is destroyed. Okay, in my case, in my case, my ex-wife left the hedge, but when we started the divorce, I was very conscious of the fact that my children needed support, emotional support, love, grace. They needed more than what they even get in order to get through this divorce, because it was a pretty rough divorce. So as a father, you forget, it's not about you, it's not about your ex-wife. Now it's about your kids and really protecting them from the outlandish decisions of maybe a judge and the outside world, because they're going to be tempted to escape out the hedge because their foundation of life has been compromised. Because the two people who they counted on the most are now done. So that's very unsettling to the psychological aspects of a young child. And so you need to really be aware of that. So my job during this divorce, and I think I succeeded fairly well, was to reinforce my hedge and to give them everything that they needed in order to get through the divorce. And it showed. We won't get into some of the issues of the divorce, but yeah, I was able to protect them, and they freely chose to stay with me. And they were older too, so it helped that they were older. By the time we did get divorced, my oldest was already married. So, so that's how old my kids were. It would help them a lot because they understood a lot more than, let's say, they would if they were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Okay, so we don't want to give the courts the right to determine your hedge, and that's what's going to happen if you fight. Both of you get together and decide what's best for your family and be giving and taking, because no one's going to get everything they want. But that's in order for the dad to maintain his hedge and some control over the family, so to speak. He's going to have to be able to understand this and not act irresponsibly or out of vengeance against the wife, because it's going to create chaos for the kids. Okay, so let me see. One of the things I did, and this is kind of, I didn't understand really what happened at the time. One of the things I did was I asked her dad for help about 6 to 8 months before I filed for divorce. I got with him and I said, hey, we need help. How can you help us? This is what's going on. And, he didn't have a hedge. We were not under his hedge. So he didn't do anything. And he basically said, we were on our own. This is your mess. You deal with it. And I was like, okay, that's not how I'm going to deal with that. But that's what he did. And then later, as the divorce, when we started the divorce, he ended up actually attacking me and the kids. So he's on the outside. Let's say Z, around, outside influences. They're attacking your hedge, and they're attacking you, whatever, or me in the hedge. So you got, that became a very difficult situation. But understanding now what I understand, he didn't have a hedge for all of us. If in my case, my son-in-law is under my hedge, and if indeed they get divorced, which hopefully not, but if they did, my job is to protect both of them and to protect the children most of all. So my focus was switch from Clint and my daughter to, number one, do what's right for my grandson and their child, or their children if they have more. Okay, it's not really necessarily to deal with them, so to speak, but to protect the little one, but to do what's best for both of them. Too many times people get in bloodline fights, and you know what? It's not going to help anybody. Just to help your side, just because this bloodline is not going to help your hedge. So there was Tom way out here attacking our hedge, and it ended up being that they did so many things that I thought were unacceptable in my hedge, that they really don't have any contact with our kids anymore, which is a very sad thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a productive thing, but you have to keep people, bad or not bad people, you have to keep people away. If they're going to harm the children, if they're going to harm my children, I don't care if you're bloodline or not, I'm not going to let you do it. Whether it's my family, their family, or anybody's family. You're there to help the children to grow emotionally, in all ways, to grow into productive people, not to attack. So so that they're under my hedge. No, they're free. Again, my kids are free to leave the hedge at any time, if they so desire. But they know that then they're at the wheels of the world. So that's not necessarily a good thing until they're able to learn and understand exactly, how to deal with the chaos, the evil, the world that lurks right outside their hedge. Okay, I think we've covered most of it for now. I don't know. We'll get some reviews from all you guys. So let me know what you think and what I could add, what you didn't like, and because this is just a first go. And I think it came out okay. A little sloppy at first, but that's okay. We'll get through it. Okay, Molly, hey Molly, you got to turn this thing off because I don't know anything about how this works. Can you turn this off?
Yeah, just press the button.
Push the button?
Yeah.
Can you push the button for me? I don't want to break it. I'll end up doing something crazy with it. Okay guys, we'll talk to you later. Feedback. Bye. Okay, we'll try that, I guess. We'll see if we can see. Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. I don't know. I don't want to get too close. I'm not that distracted. Okay. So what we have is we're going to explain the hedge. The hedge, provider and protector. Why can't women find a good man? Number of reasons for that. There's not a lot of good men out there, for one. But it goes a little more detailed, and we're going to talk about the hedge. So, first of all, we want to talk about biblical applications. I'm not here to preach, but there are biblical applications here from a creator God, and there are also universal laws of nature at work. So to me, they're the same thing. The universal laws of nature go hand in hand with a creator God. So we're going to talk about Bible, but I'm not here to preach. But you take what you will. All right, so the hedge is restraint, it's a protection, it's the place around, it's the head. And it's first mentioned in Job, Job verse 110. God is talking to Satan, and Job's life is very good. He's very well to do, and he's got a lot of great things. So Satan comes up to, they're speaking with God, and Satan goes, well, you have a hedge around him, I can't get to him. And he's complaining about that because there's a discussion about Job, and we're not going to get into that discussion, but basically what happens is God takes away the hedge, the protective coverings, and gives Satan access to Job, and we can talk about that on another video. But for now, for our understanding, the hedge is very important, and this, when I was reading Job, this came to me as an epiphany to where I could understand. So anyways, let's talk about the hedge. So the hedge, as it relates to family, to dating, to relationships, male-female relationships, we're going to get into that. So first of all, we're going to talk about my marriage in particular. When I got married, I dated a single mother of 2 children, and the kids were pretty well out of control at the time. They were acting out, they were angry, there was chaos, there was turmoil all throughout their early lives because of the divorce, and a hostile divorce with my soon-to-be ex-husband. So anyways, what I did was I came in, and this was before I was a believer in Jesus, and I didn't have really that much of a spiritual foundation, but what I saw, what they needed was a hedge, a protection, a sanctuary. So what I did when I became their dad, and I made that commitment to become their dad, is I created a hedge for them, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. I created love, safety, physical and emotional safety, very important and part of the hedge, truth, sacrifice. I created the structure of the family, discipline, and also the freedom. Freedom goes in any good hedge. So I created all those things for the kids, and then the kids started getting better and better. And I have a great relationship with all my kids. And so I'm the dad to 6 and the father of 4. So, and I have a great relationship with all my kids because I was able to create a hedge. But at the time that I married my wife, I didn't know what this was. I just knew that they needed structure, and I knew they needed love and attention and so forth. So I created a hedge. So this hedge again is biblically, there's 15 verses in the Bible that mention hedge or hedges, and you can go look that up. Okay, so what this hedge refers to is this is a family structure. So you got your husband and your wife, and the male is a provider and protector, and the woman generally takes care of the inside of the hedge. She's a nurturer, caretaker, the sensitive side of the man, so to speak. Men have an edgy, hard side. Women have a soft, nurturing, caring side. So together it works. So anyways, I had my family in the hedge, and we were able to raise a pretty good family. Now, of course, in life there always tends to be problems, and let's cover that in a moment. But we're also going to cover the kids. Okay, also this. Okay, let's say this inside your hedge is your family. This is the structure you created. The rest is the evils in the world. Okay, the rest of the world, we have hate, we have lies, we have deceptions, evil, abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse, chaos, temptation. We have all the things that go with the world. But inside the hedge is a protected area where the kids can actually grow up in a controlled environment, a learning environment. Okay, so that's the restraint, that's the protection that you provide as a family. Okay, so without a hedge, what you're going to get is what we see. So I'm going to run over some stats real quick. 85% of incarcerated youth grew up in a fatherless home, but basically without a hedge. Children without a father are 4 times more likely to live in poverty. Children from fatherless homes are twice as likely to drop out of school. Girls who live in a fatherless home are 4 times more likely to become mothers by the age of 20. Children who live in a single-parent home are more than 2 times more likely to commit suicide. Okay, 75% of rapists are motivated by displaced anger associated with the feelings of abandonment from an absentee father. There's also the suicide, prison, and abuse issues that generally come to a greater extent without a father providing a hedge for his family. And we see that in society. All we have to do is look outside. Okay, so let's go where we're going to go to next. Okay, let's not go to, so when I got married, I created a hedge. We raised a family. We ended up getting a divorce. Okay, there were some issues there. So during the divorce, my focus was on protecting my children, protecting their emotional, their psychological, their ability to cope with a divorce. So my focus was basically protecting them in a divorce. When I got divorced, basically we took mom out. She's no longer part of the hedge. She's basically going to be out. Oh, let's see. She's going to be out here. Okay, so now she is no longer in the hedge. She's no longer offered my protection, my provision. She no longer offers anything to the hedge as well as the family in regards to the hedge. Okay, she's still the mother. I mean, the mother and the kids love each other, of course, but she's no longer a part of the hedge. So that compromises the hedge. So yeah, this is not going as well as I hoped it would. But anyways, I'm gonna have to get a better script. So let's move on. Okay, so, let's see. Now, man, this is not good. Okay, so anyways, let's continue on and see what we can do. Let's create additions to the hedge. Okay, so no, we just need to probably end this. No, let's just keep going, I guess. My hedge is breaking down. Okay, so let's just move on to additions to the hedge. For example, when my kids grow up and get married, instead of, let's say my daughter Monica married a guy named Clint, they're hopefully going to be inside my hedge. Okay, when they started their marriage, they were outside the hedge. So that means they're really not a part of the family. They're doing their own thing. And they lose a lot of guidance. They lose a lot of experience that maybe can be offered from the older generation. So older generation should try to get them in their hedge, their own little private hedge. So they're married, they've got a separate autonomous hedge, but yet they're within the sphere of experience and guidance, and me hopefully being able to help them in their journeys and as well. So, and you see that playing out. So they have children. And they're part of my hedge. So, and that gives them a little safety as far as the child goes. When little guy here comes out, because they're not very good hedge builders, so they're not able to really. They don't understand a lot of things about raising kids, about the marriage. They have a lot of, like a lot of young couples do. There are marital issues in which they need, hopefully, good experienced leadership. So, but in this case, the hedge offers protection. And so when little guy gets out of his hedge, or out of Clint's and Monica's hedge, he jumps into my hedge. So there's protection there. My job. Oh, this is not going well. Let's just end this. Yeah, we need a better script. Okay, let's see. This is not good. All right, guys. Hello. Let's see if we can get this here. That doesn't work. Okay, let's try it anyway. We are going to. That's not very good. Let's see if we can get this up a little bit. Gotta makeshift this kind of crazy stuff. Okay, so. Doesn't work either. Shoot. Why did it change? Go back. back a little bit. Okay, maybe that'll work. I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, today we're going to talk about the hedge in regards, but we have to take a step backwards. We have to go back to original intent and so forth. So what we're going to compare and contrast a little bit is the origins of mankind. So we have two different theories. We have the creator and we have the theory of evolution. So if you believe in the theory of evolution, this won't be a good video for you to watch. Or it actually would be a good video. You can contrast your information. Okay, so what we have here is we have a creator God, or we have the theory of evolution. Some basic things that we can talk about are the order, structure, and a mathematical equation of the universe. There is an order and there's a structure, which is completely contrary to the theory of evolution. So both of these ideologies are completely opposite in almost every respect, and that should make sense because they're contrasting ideological events. So on the other side, you have the theory of evolution, of course. So you have chaos, no structure, haphazard. We were created out of nothing. So you either have a God who created everything, or you have the creation out of nothing. So we'll just continue on. Again, you have one set of ideology where God is your creator. So basically, God is the Father, and we are the children of God. The other one is that we are descendants of monkeys. And so if your parent or grandparents or great-grandparents were monkeys, then that's different. So good luck with that ideology. In God's creation, there are absolutes. So you should write that down. There are absolutes. There's an absolute God. And the theory of evolution, they say there are no absolutes, which is an absolute in itself. If there are no absolutes, that's an absolute, and therefore disproves your own ideological perspective. Here we have, what are we looking at? Okay, well, here we have absolutes. There would be, everything would be relative, because you can't, you just make it up as you go. Here, with God created universe, there's an order, there's a plan, there's a structure. With this one, it's just all random, chaotic events. Okay, so we can continue on. So what we're going to do in God's plan is human nature. We'll just look at human nature. We seek fellowship. So we're going to seek fellowship, and that will be consistent. Here we seek pleasure. We seek our own. People do seek fellowship, whether or not you believe it or not. They seek fellowship, or they seek pleasure in their relationships. Well, we do on this side as well, but there's a difference. In this scenario, we're loved by God. In this scenario, we're not. In this scenario, where we just create whatever love we can, and it tends to be a haphazard and chaotic message of love. In this scenario, we're cherished, we're redeemed by the Lord, and this is a Christian perspective. I should mention that earlier. This is a Christian perspective, and we're children of God. In this side, we're not. We're just children of monkeys. So there's no point. There's really no point to our existence. In fact, if this is true, there is no love, there is no point, there is no reason for our existence, because there's really, again, no point. So there's life, and then there's death, and then there's nothing afterwards. So really, if you kill somebody or you're killed, it doesn't matter, because there's really no point anyway. And that's simple, as simple as it gets. On this side, you're loved and valued, or you're valued for sure. And if you feel the love or not, it depends on your perspective of how you see the world, how you see your creator, if you see the creator at all. Okay, so monkeys, Adam and Eve. Okay, so let's get to Adam and Eve real quick. Adam and Eve. Okay, so what happened, and this is how we're going to get into the hedge here. Now, the hedge is a universal concept, universal law of nature. It's going to happen whether you believe it or not. Whether you're from this side or this side, it will apply. So I personally believe that God created the hedge, and there's a protection in the hedge, and it's the universal law of nature. You can actually apply it to your lives. whether you're on this side or not. Okay. On this side, there's nothing. There's whatever you create. Okay, so with Adam and Eve, if you go back to their origins, remember our job is to seek fellowship. Our job is to seek love and relationships. And as a human beings, that's accepted on both sides. So if we have Adam and Eve, in regards to the hedge, what we'll have is they broke fellowship with God. They disobeyed God, and they bit of the fruit, which they shouldn't have bit, which God told them not to bite. So what happened was, they were in paradise. Of course, they were in heaven with God, or paradise, whatever you want to call it. And then they violated that trust. So basically, they were sent out into the world. Well, where does where does the world exist? Okay, well, let's get back to that in a minute. Okay, inside the hedge of God, we'll get to that in a minute. But God creates a hedge of, basically protection. That as long as you stay within God's plan, then we will. God's plan. Okay, as long as we stay within the guiding principles of what God aspires for you, you'll be within the hedge and the protection. Adam and Eve violated that trust, so they got kicked out. They were now in the world, and then we all know what happened. In the world, inside it, let's look at what's inside the hedge. Inside the hedge is grace, trust, love, commitment, sacrifice, structure, emotional and psychological safety, growth, freedom, all the good attributes you would think of a growing relationship. Outside the hedge would be all these things, would be Satan. We have evil, chaos, fear, isolation, manipulation, control, selfishness, lies, suffering. You cannot have any of those things. Any of these things cannot be inside the hedge. They don't exist inside the hedge. This is where God exists. This is where God's economy is. Okay, outside is where Satan is. This is the world. This is the world, and this is the head. This is God's ordained process for you. Okay, let's see where we're at here. A little rough go, but it's, you can see where we need to go. Okay, now also what people don't realize, especially Christians, are not going to realize, and it makes sense, sin and the laws of Moses, the laws, the Ten Commandments, they're outside the hedge. They're not in the hedge. And we can get to that later, but Christians are probably going to be very upset about that. But it's in the Bible. It's in the New Testament, all over the place. So we will talk about that at a future time. But for now, we just must understand that anything that's not in a valued, trusting, God-ordained relationship, you're in here. And if you're not, you're out here. Okay, so you can actually diagram the hedge in your relationships. Okay, so we talk Adam and Eve. We're going to cover Job. Now, also, Job was a perfect man. According to the Bible, he's a perfect man, and he was inside the hedge. Now, when the hedge was removed, his world fell apart. He was exposed to the chaos and the evil in the world, and that's exactly what happens. So, if you are not in God's plan, or if you take yourself out of God's plan, like Adam and Eve did, Job was exposed to the evils of the world. You don't have the protection of God, and then you're going to be exposed to the world. Okay, so what else can we cover here? Okay, safety of the world. Okay, I think that's about it for now. This is just a start, rough draft, kind of like writing a rough draft. And let's see what else we can do. There's so much that needs to be broken down into simple things. Okay, we'll talk to you later.